Ever since the past conference and a lot of the conversations around that, there was a lot of question about who are Excel users because this conference had been going on for a while and it's been primarily SQL people, database admins, and IT people. And over the years, they said that, at least the organizers were saying that Excel can't be ignored, but SQL people weren't prepared to talk Excel and Excel users' needs in an enterprise. And so they were it's about Excel users. What do you need? And I appreciated that because it felt like we're on a team. We don't need to feud. The stories about all this tension and animosity between the business and IT. So I've wondered, okay, yeah, we are all on the same team, really. But what roles do we each serve? And I can only speak from my experience as an Excel user in an enterprise and outside of an enterprise. What are our roles in this? How do we see ourselves, the four of us? And then what have we seen in our clients when we go out into the wild and see Excel being used and the stories we've heard and firsthand experiences with Excel users vis-a-vis the
Wow.
wow. And I'm gonna tell you what, and I'm gonna tell you what too. I'm gonna whoop this on you. This going in a couple directions. Um, this really hit me when I am teaching my session, and when it got clear that I was not going to be saying anything about SQL or enterprise level solutions, about a third of the room got up and walked out. And I was okay with I understood. I just had to be honest about that. And then I thought about I have worked in enterprise. I was in an enterprise for 7 years, but I never was enterprise level solution. But I was a valued member of the enterprise doing a lot of surreptitious things for people because IT isn't nimble. When there's one person complaining about something, or you got 100 clients or customers complaining about something, IT can't stop the enterprise to deal with the one employee or the 100 customers. So that's where I felt like I fit in, and it's also coming out of my blog post recently inspired it. The Excel user in post-apocalyptic times that's how I saw it. That's what energizes me to think about this dystopia. All the data has been looted and burned, and who is going to go out there and all the mayhem to get data? The Excel user, because we are nimble enough. The IT person, they can't move that fast.
Yes.
Yes.
I think the bring in this somebody called it a bring your own tools kind of world, and I agree. All the big data hype and whatnot. But you're kind of describing. I'm having flashbacks to episode 1, that fateful episode where nobody knew what we were doing, where we talked about this idea of modern Excel, and I think what Oz is talking about is this idea of empower. These Excel users that you're talking about are the ones that need to be empowered to like I said, bring your own tools kind of world. So the analytics landscape, I think, really is changing, and I think those Excel users you speak of are really in a good place to kind of lead the charge. So I think that's what you were characterizing them.
That's how but I wonder if some of these big data solutions can help the one person in a cube trying to help 100 customers, um, because there's also issues of security and a desire to bring data and control back behind the curtain or inside the $6 million solution. And I wonder if the $6 million solution can help Oz, who's sitting there and somebody's saying, I don't think my commissions are right. Well, Oz can take a week and dig down into that report and find out that the thing is 10 years old and has not changed. But IT, no, that's not their role.
Yeah, I'll jump in a little bit. I think that, we'll say your $6 million solution, just as an example. As I go out and I'm talking to customers about installing those sorts of things, my first selling point is always the Excel add-in. The Excel add-in that will connect people who are in finance, who are already used to using Excel every single day, that will connect them to that multi-million-dollar solution. That is what makes it the most usable. And I see, whenever you're rolling out business intelligence or any of those multi-million-dollar type solutions, the first role of IT in that situation is to be a data consolidator and a data provider, not to be necessarily report developers and building all day in crystal reports and dashboards and all that sort of stuff. Their first thing is to feed Soleil. Their first job should be to feed the people who are in Excel, the people who are out working in the business, solving problems every single day. That should be their primary focus, number one. And after they've done that, and only after they've done that, should they move on to potentially doing things that are a little bit more difficult than doing in Excel. Things, tools that might be specifically designed to build a dashboard, or specifically designed to, on an enterprise level. But for the most part, I think solution number one for an IT organization rolling out any sort of tool is to feed the analyst, and feeding the analyst, through an Excel add-in or some sort of way to where they can get around and tools they're already used to is what's the most useful.
So
I think that, it's not just important that, I usually always say it's not about the technical skill and the analytical skills. It's more about analytical skills. And I'm not going to challenge my normal line of thinking, but I have been thinking a lot lately that, the new stuff that we get, like the new Excel stuff, like Power Pivot, Power BI, a lot of organizations are just so far behind that even the ones that try to get it, they don't have the right specifications. They're still arguing over regulations, all that stuff within their organizations. And they're just years away from it. Maybe a decade. A long time away. So it's still important that we know this stuff that's considered old stuff now. And I think those were the people who know that stuff in organizations are the original, IT saboteurs who just, did their own sort of self-service IT on their computers. And that is really the role of Excel users in many ways, is to be the alternative to the giant project that may never happen, or even stuff that isn't so giant, just technology that, you go see at conferences, you're like, oh, this stuff is awesome. I can't wait till we get it.
Man.
We're 10 years away, even though we're starting today.
Man.
Yeah. There's a little bit of an evolution, though, right? So there's at first, analysts are out building things in their own spreadsheets. We'll say they're building all of their own calculations, they're doing all their own data cleansing, they're doing all their own, etc. And we'll just say they're calculating, head count, or they're doing some calculation they have to do over and over from one spreadsheet to the next, to the next, to the next, or from one file to the next, to the next. There comes a risk at that point that you have calculations in too many different places, and once the logic changes, you've got to think about all the different places that logic is at. And so I've been down this road enough to say, there comes a point to where if you can have specific logic that is used over and over at a level, maybe that's at the database level, start moving that closer and closer towards a database so that it cascades to all of your reports and to all of your ad hoc tools like Excel. So there becomes an evolution of that. But I think first things first is to feed the analyst, and then secondly, to figure out from the analyst what are their repetitive sorts of things that you can put into a database where they can get to it more easily.
Yeah, repetitive. Man, oh man, Jordan, you had me thinking that, Rick, I want to get back to what you're saying. Jordan had me thinking about these episodes of Naked and Afraid, where you got people that they're sitting there, they got somebody's okay, they're gonna eat the worms, and they found some root that they can eat, and then somebody says, look, we need more calories than worms and roots. I'm gonna go try to get a pig or a bird or something. I'm gonna try, and that's how I think about the Excel person is the one that'll say you can stay here and eat worms and be safe and stay alive and survive. Yes, you will be alive at the end of this 21 days, but I'm gonna eat a pig, and I will share it. Get it. That is the Excel user. And Rick, you have me think about, when there are business rule changes, what are ways that an enterprise can be set up when there is something like, this report has been good for 10 years, but then there was a business rule change, something like, okay, we'll give you the revenue share that you've been asking for the past 5 years. Great, they sign all the contracts and stuff. How does it get into the canned report that comes out every month?
I'm not sure I completely followed the question.
Okay, so if you have a canned report that's been great,
Right.
and then there's an agreement later that there's a branch that's been asking for a revenue share. Okay, we're going to give it to you. Somebody over here who is just in a routine of running a report every month and reporting something or paying money out of it or whatever, and the revenue share piece never gets into that stream of who needs to change the report.
Right. And this comes a bit into we talked about a little bit about evolution of how data gets cleansed and where calculations happen. And so as things evolve, and usually the evolution, unless you have a person who comes in, some sort of consultant comes in and says, okay, here's the way your strategy is going to be, and here's how things are going to evolve, and here's why we're going to do things at a particular level, most people can't afford that. Right? And so for most people, it's not some big strategy, it's just an evolution. And there are certain things that you know will evolve, or that you see that will evolve. Number one, we talked about a few different layers that you go through of data cleansing. The same thing is with report calculations, right? Well,
Go ahead. Just want to inject some. Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned the whole cost thing, because that's what kind of frustrates me with a lot of solutions and stuff. Is there isn't so much consideration about cost, and why don't you just update the report? Well, because it costs money, and there's upheaval involved. So I just wanted to say that I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah. So what costs less in the short term is building something in a report, right? And building something in the spreadsheet, and that's the reason Excel's so pervasive. It's something we could be nimble with, right? And we can kind of move around the data. There does come a point to where there are so many spreadsheets and there's so much risk because so many calculations are done in 15 different ways in different spreadsheets that it makes sense to move things one layer up, so that as you're receiving the data already has that calculation in it. And not only that, the other department that you were talking about, the other department is getting that same feed from the same place, and it already has a calculation in it. So there comes a point to where it makes sense that you're not doing as much of your logic in the report layer because of the risk there, but you start doing that, a little bit closer to maybe a database layer in a data warehouse. And then, even then, there's ETL logic that brings data from different systems into a data warehouse. So there comes a point, and at this point you're talking Fortune 500 companies where they say, okay, well, even that's too much of a risk. There's too many calculations going on to the data warehouse, and they'll move out to the different systems and say, we're going to make sure that logic is at that point you're doing a big data governance program, and it's getting real messy, but there are certain evolutions that people go through. And for most of us, we'll never evolve to that. I mean, we don't need to worry about that. And all we need to worry about is how do we get our IT needs to feed us data, right? And there will come a point where there's too much risk of everything that we're doing in our calculations in our spreadsheets that we'll have to ask IT to update some of the logic into their database. And I think that's the role for the most part, or should be.
Right. Right.
Any closing thoughts on this?
Jordan, Sylvia?
Well, I think to maybe try to put a little bow on it, I think all of these roles are changing, and to circle all the way back to Oz's original kind of opening statement, where do the Excel people fit in all of this? And if by Excel people you mean people like us, people watching the show, I think we are the ambassadors to kind of, you know, be the go-between between the IT and the reporting people and the analysts, to kind of bring those worlds together. I believe in all the modern Excel, and the world is changing, all that kind of stuff. I believe it, and I also know from my own experience that I've spent, you know, many years being the liaison between IT and finance and reporting and planning, and so I that's where I see it going. I see us being ambassadors between those two worlds to bring them together.
I agree with you. I think
teach the world to sing.
Right. So,
IT's job to feed us, and our job to feed.
I had something there. Because one thing is, I in my bones, I feel like I am so tired of talking about enterprise and big data, but it's not going anywhere. It's the reality.
Right.
But there's so much other goofy stuff going on. Is when, you know, the slide comes up at Past BAC that 80% of big data solutions never get finished or adopted. Now, I don't know how accurate the 80% is, but that's a high number. What is going on? And then you think about the politics and everything else, and how famous company that's known for having strong arm tactics for you to buy their their technical services in addition to the software, and then it doesn't work, but at least the person who pushed it doesn't look bad because he didn't hire, you know, two dudes from San Diego to do the solution. You know, so there's all this stuff of people worrying about if they're going to look like a dope afterward if it doesn't work. Infighting between departments that you'll never understand. And that's why I've liked working more with smaller companies. And one thing is, you know, I had somebody contact me. She said, Oz, man, this commissions are messed up here, and can I get you an arrangement to talk with the owner, maybe even fly out here? And it didn't take long to find out that the so-called data mess was really cover for some shady stuff. Company, we could get to that easier and know, okay, we leaving this alone. But in an enterprise, they might spend the money and let you do stuff and block you and guide you, and you don't know what's going on.